Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
What's triggering our mind and what's behind our anger and our attachments. If we're aware of those things, then we can work with them and we can work through them. And so a lot of this approach is just being really real with ourselves. Like, what am I experiencing right now? Like, oh, is it anger? Is it jealousy? Is it a type of attachment? And then really facing it, with compassion and understanding and care and allowing ourselves to go to the depths of it and move through it, like using the practices to move through those emotions and get to that other side that is peace.
Introducing a powerful new update from the Foojan App. Now with flexible subscription plans to fit your journey monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Our new AI-driven onboarding customizes your path to feeling better, faster, and enjoy a refreshed experience with stunning 3D interactive videos. Update now. Empower your inner voice with Foojan. Download today.
Welcome to the Inner Voice, a Heartfelt Chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist, an author, and the creator of the Awareness Integration Theory. And I'm so thrilled for you to join us today, which I promise it's a very interesting and insightful discussion. So today I speak with Reema Datta. She is the author of The Yogi's Way, Transform Your Mind, Health, and Reality. Reema first learned yoga and Ayurveda from her mother and her grandmothers, as well as her grandfather. She wrote several books on Vedic philosophy. After receiving her master's degree from the London School of Economics, Reema worked for the United Nations before leaving to study ancient yogic wisdom and practice. So since 2002, she has taught yoga and Ayurveda workshops, retreats, and trainings in 20 different countries across 5 continents. So her students include Sting, Paul Simon, Eddie Brickell, Zainab Salbi, and Suchta Baliga, and thousands of other practitioners globally. So you could definitely get more information about her at reemayoga.com. I've had an amazing conversation. We went through some of the wisdom that she has learned and brought into her book, and she shares some of them with you in this episode. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This particular podcast, go ahead and connect with me in any way you like. I'd love to hear from you. Go to Foojan App, and it's 31 areas of your life that you could do guided journaling and mindfulness, and it does give you some very guided meditations throughout, so you could improve your life in that area. We found it's about 71 to 75% improvement with people who have only even used one area of their life. And you could talk to Mitra, which is the AI chatbot, which has been trained in awareness integration, and you could ask her questions and she could respond to you. Without further ado, here's Reema Datta.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zeine, and Dr. Manoukian, 3 experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
Well, I'm so excited to have Reema Datta with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So you had written about the yogi's way. So tell us first about your own journey toward, going through the yoga, and what do you mean by a yogi versus someone who's doing yoga as kind of like a ritual as part of their life?
Yes. So my journey, what really birthed this book is my own struggles with my own mind. So in the book, The Yogi's Way, it's transform your mind, health, and reality. And gosh, it's been about 10 years now, but I went through a separation with the father of my daughter. And I had a really hard time with like anger and anxiety and attachment and shame and these kinds of like really like challenging emotions. And I had been practicing yoga for decades. I grew up with yoga. I've been teaching for over a decade. And I noticed at that time that even though I have all of this yoga experience, I'm still struggling in my mind and I'm having a hard time really getting a hold of it and really experiencing some solid, genuine inner peace. So that really struck me because it wasn't just for a day, it was for like weeks and months even that I was struggling. And so I went back to the yoga texts, like the original yoga texts, like the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. And these are texts that I grew up with, coming from a family of yogis. But I read the text, with the eyes of someone who was feeling a deep wound and a mother and a woman. And the teachings just came alive to me in a very different way. And I started seeing and really appreciating all of these teachings on how yoga can help us navigate really tough thoughts and emotions like anger and attachment and fear. And so I actually cut down on my teaching of yoga and decided to really focus on these wisdom teachings. So I sat and just read these texts again and again and again. And then I started to develop practices to help myself come out of these states of anger and attachment and fear and shame. And and they were really working for me. So I would develop these yoga sequences that included movement and meditation and self-inquiry, pranayama, mantra, like all the different aspects of yoga. And I would put myself through these practices again and again for weeks and months. And I started to like free myself of those states. I noticed how thoughts and emotions can really bring us down. They can drain our energy. Or if we learn to shift them, they can really uplift us. And the way to do that is written in these ancient texts. And so because they were working on me, I went back to teaching and I called it yoga for emotional healing. So I taught workshops and trainings and shared these sequences with my students, and I was witnessing how they helped them. And it was so beautiful and such an honor to be able to witness that. And at some point, I realized that there's only so much I can personally travel and teach. I'm a mother, and just physically, it's only possible to travel so much. So at one point, I just thought, this is a book. Like, let me write a book and that way share this approach with many more people.
So one of the things that I'm hearing from you is, and I hear that a lot of times this happens, and I, practiced yoga for about 15 years, and I remember personally that sometimes we get caught into the physical poses, and we use them almost like exercises. So yes, they do offer, even if you're using it just as a physical poses, that they do what they do best anyway. But you were seeing that when you're becoming more conscious and you utilize a different way of mindfulness around while you're doing the poses, that it really elevates the practical implications or applications of it. And it really does shift the energy that's there with the emotional energy that is there. So you could shift these emotional energies now that you were focusing on the feelings and your consciousness around it, and not just being aware of the poses in your physical exercise, let's say.
Yes. In the Upanishads, there's a teaching, they say action alone is not enough. Like action must be done with understanding and wisdom. So I really took that to heart. And the book, I share like what is the wisdom of how our thoughts and emotions affect our subtle body, the subtle winds that move through the body, and how does that affect the physical body and our physical health and our physical reality. And and then practicing yoga, asana, pranayama, mantra, all of the practices with that understanding. Because if we're aware of what's triggering our mind and what's behind our anger and our attachments, if we're aware of those things, then we can work with them and we can work through them. And so a lot of this approach is just being really real with ourselves. Like, what am I experiencing right now? Like, oh, is it anger? Is it jealousy? Is it a type of attachment? And then really facing it, with compassion and understanding and care and allowing ourselves to go to the depths of it and move through it, like using the practices to move through those emotions and get to that other side that is peace. But I find that peace, like everything good in life, it takes work, to get, like, whatever it is in life you want, like a nice house or a nice car, it takes work to get it, and it's the same thing with inner peace and inner freedom. Like it takes that level of dedication and awareness and a willingness to look at these things and work through them.
So you've created a 12-week kind of self-help consciousness with natural poses in this book. Can you share a little bit about there's a sequence that you say that you've taken from all of these different approaches, that you've looked at the structure of these poses with this way of consciousness in 12 weeks supports you into having the ability and having the skills of shifting, becoming conscious and shifting. Can you share a little bit about your method?
Sure. Yeah. So the book is written as a 12-week course. So there's 12 chapters, and you're meant to spend 1 week with each chapter. And each chapter is filled with practices, because I didn't want to write a book just on wisdom. I wanted to write a book where people could immediately apply the wisdom to their lives. So every chapter at the end, there's a set of practices. And by the time you come to week 12 or chapter 12, you've developed a 70-minute sequence, a 70-minute practice. And I call that sequence Heal Yourself Now. Because all of the practices throughout the book, it's ultimately teaching us through our own awareness to become our own teacher and our own healer. So that 70-minute sequence, it includes pranayama, breath practices, about 20 minutes of asana or movement, and a series of awareness practices, some communication practices. There's a couple meditations in the sequence. And so it's offering, and there's mantras as well. And so it's offering a way to practice yoga in a holistic way. Because I do find that today in the world, yoga is mostly a physical practice. You go to a yoga class and you basically, for the most part, 90% of the practice is probably stretching and strengthening your body. The focus is on asana, the postures. So I wanted to give the reader a feeling of the many aspects of yoga, the breath work, the meditation, the awareness practices, contemplative practices, the power of mantra. And just in 70 minutes, you can have this practice that touches upon all of these aspects of yoga. And it becomes like a holistic and a healing experience. So that's the gist of the structure of the book.
You talked about kleshas. What is the klesha? Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so klesha, it's a Sanskrit word. It translates as mind poison or destructive emotion. So the ancient yogis, they had a very sophisticated understanding of the mind and the power of the mind. And they understood that the mind has the power to destroy us. Like if we have emotions like anger and jealousy and shame, and we're just brewing in them for weeks and months and years, and we're not addressing them, then that it doesn't just drain our energy and leave us tired and exhausted, but it can also lead to illness. So and then they also understood that the power of the mind, if we develop good habits in the mind with our thoughts and emotions, then the mind can uplift us, and it can be like a portal to deep peace and creativity, and can connect us with our purpose and really lead to a very deep joy and peace. So a lot of the ancient teachings focus on the mind, which is interesting because these days the focus of yoga is on the body. So that was a big reason I wrote the book. It's like, what are these teachings on the mind? Especially because I knew, when I was struggling in my own mind, I knew I wasn't the only one. I could see as I looked around me, I could see even my yoga colleagues who were teaching at pretty high levels and were my good friends, like were very open with me that they struggle in their minds too. And then of course our students, and then of course the general public, the rates of anxiety and depression and self-worth, that there's so much struggle in our greater society. So I felt like let's bring these teachers. They're so helpful and they work,
Very
So,
much. Yeah. I've my experience has been with first with my yoga teacher was also physical asanas and pranayamas, and then working through that, which really did help me a lot. And then he changed his approach to a lot of different type of mindfulness and breathing work within the yoga, which I call them yoga therapy, because he would like to look at exactly what's happening within the students' bodies and state of mind, and then would give them a particular either mantras or breathing techniques or emotion or positions to be able to release those. But then I also went to Brahma Kumar's group in India, which they utilize Raja Yoga, which is a lot about also mind and shifting the mind and being conscious about how you interpret, how do you perceive, how do you shift those in from that perspective of bringing all of them together. And since I'm a psychotherapist, obviously, the concepts of mind and emotion are something that have been not only personally important to me, but also in my work, to be, to look at that consciousness about the mind. Can you share a little bit about when you say the Kleshas are a little bit like more of a poison to your mind, what kind of thought process, like from a psychology perspective, when I look at what's poison for our minds, or, the concepts of negativity that kind of starts and erodes, right? So the negativity brings you into this helplessness and hopelessness of as a state. Not that, there are many times that we could be helpless in a moment because, the situation calls for that at that moment. But to go into those states, or the brewing of the anger or the negativity of wanting to revenge. And so I've watched this throughout the 32 years of being a psychotherapist, and on myself of looking at, for example, how and which emotions and have been, such as like anger has been very destructive for me. Although there are times that I need to share my anger and take that anger and really take a stand for myself. And it was like, okay, where is it that this anger is really useful for me and moving me forward? And it's a great motivation. And where does it cross to the side that it becomes poisonous and it's destroying me or my relationships? Can you share from your yogi way what you see, the thoughts or the emotions that you call them toxic in a sense, or poison for the system?
yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because it's so important to understand that, like, when we say that the kleshas are mind poisons, it's like these emotions have the potential to be poison, or they have the potential to be healing, actually. So it's not like anger and these kleshas, like fear and anxiety, shame, attachment. They're not good or bad in and of themselves, so it's really important to understand that we're not labeling those emotions as like negative or harmful. It's just that they have the potential to be destructive. And so the whole thing comes in the approach. Like, how are we approaching these emotions when they arise? And whether they're harmful or healing all lies in the approach, right? So for example, if I'm feeling anger, I could, I have the choice to just steep in that anger, and maybe if it's anger towards someone, just like fill my mind with these, not great thoughts about the other person, and just stew in that. And that's probably if I do that for weeks and months, I'm probably gonna end up harming myself. But if I approach anger in a way that, like, with like compassion and curiosity, like, what is this anger about? Like, anger is actually, if I approach it in a certain way, then it can be very clarifying. It can show me what's important to me. Like maybe there's injustice in the world and I feel anger about that. So I have a choice even with that. Like, I can sit in my house and just like stew and be like, these people are so this and those people are so that, and just get into those thoughts of like judgment and but revenge and things like that. Or I can say like, wow, there's injustice out there and it's really, really upsetting me. I feel enraged. Like, maybe I'll get together with my neighbors or other people I know who feel the same way as me, and maybe we can just talk about what we can do, what solutions we can come up with. And all of a sudden, the anger, it's not bad. It's just like, it's shown me something that's important to me. It's helped me connect with people out in the world. It's helped me like think about what are solutions. So all of a sudden it's like something that's actually uplifting and clarifying, and can be actually healing, because I'm active. I'm doing something about whatever triggered this anger. So it's a lot of it lies in the approach, how we're approaching the emotions. And in the book I share, it's chapter 4. It's called Consciousness, and I feel like this is like one of the ultimate gifts of yoga, is teaching us how to sit in the seat of consciousness as we approach everything in our lives, the pleasant, the painful, everything in between. And consciousness, it's like, it's hard to describe, but I'll do my best. It's like our innermost being, which is a dimension of just spaciousness and quietness. And when we're sitting in the seat of consciousness, there's space for everything. There's space for our pleasant emotions and thoughts and experiences, and there's space for the painful ones. And so when we're sitting in the seat of consciousness, we just allow whatever's arising to arise and to be seen and to be felt. And we let go of that layer of judgment and like calling like anger good or bad or right or wrong or better or worse. There's none of that. It's just like, this is what's arising in the moment. It's an attachment, it's an anger, it's a peace, whatever it is just is. And it also releases that layer of like pushing away something painful or grasping to something pleasant, because that's what the mind does. But consciousness is like a deeper dimension than the mind. And it's like there's just space for all of it. And there's a quietness in the sense that it's not judging or labeling or calling it this and that. And so when we're sitting in the seat of consciousness, it's like we're just, even if a klesha arises, it's like, okay, let me be with this, and let me see what's really at the depths of this, And consciousness, it's like, sometimes it's explained as like a neutral space, and it is kind of neutral, but when you meditate and you get familiar with that space of consciousness, as one of my teachers describes, that neutrality, it blossoms into love. So that space of consciousness, it's really the space of love. And it's like whether I'm feeling anxious or low on myself in one moment, it's like this underlying love is here. And yoga, it's really, when we say yoga means union or yoking, we're really yoking with that underlying reality, which is love or consciousness. And we're approaching everything from that space.
This past weekend, having to face a lot of anger out there and
Yes.
the war that was happening and a lot of things that were happening, I found myself getting, caught into like this rage because of
Yeah.
comments and, looking at everything that was happening. And as you were sharing, I sat with that anger and the non-action, because I chose not to have don't fall into the game of the conflict and conversation. And I really went into just the sadness of, looking at the world and how, people are harming each other in a way. And then sitting in that sadness as you share, as you're looking at it, then it went into compassion. And then, just listening to other people getting enraged, it was more like, okay, I need to be with my sadness in order. It went from like rage, anger to sadness to compassion. And just by observing it, just by being in it and not necessarily acting immediately out of one of the emotions. So it's like when you say, when you are with you and you allow long enough, time enough to be with what's going on inside of you, that somehow we do find ourselves finally to go into the compassion and love that is within each one of us, in a sense.
Yeah.
Everyone, go get this book, The Yogi's Way, to Transform Your Mind, Health, and Reality by Reema Datta. Reema, what are some of the Yoga Sutras that you see that are the biggest obstacles to our own spiritual growth?
I think, the biggest obstacle to our spiritual growth is our mind. And it is Kleshas. And that's one reason I focused on that in the book, because when you go back to the ancient texts, they recognize that the biggest obstacle to spiritual growth are Kleshas. Our own, the war that's taking place in our own mind, with our attachments, with our fears, with our feelings of separation between self and other, which they would just call delusion, because we are interconnected. And as now science has proven, all of life is interconnected. So when the mind is caught up in these kleshas and we don't address them, and they're just streaming through our mind continuously, then that becomes an obstacle to spiritual growth, which I see as connecting to our purpose. That like we each, and this is in our ancient text too, that we each are born with a swadharma, which means a very unique purpose. Like we each came with these very unique gifts to contribute to the whole of life. And genuine inner peace and satisfaction and joy, that all comes from giving our gifts to the world, from, knowing what our purpose is and then being able to refine it and contribute it. That's really where the peace and joy come from. So if our mind is like cluttered with kleshas, then that's going to inhibit us from like knowing, like discovering what our swadharma is, and then having the energy to develop it and contribute it to the world. So that's like in the ancient text, and I completely agree that because I felt it, when I've been overcome with kleshas, I felt how it can really just strip us of our vitality and just kind of leave us, drained. And so as we overcome those states of mind, then this energy, we free up energy for our deeper soul work, which essentially is giving our gifts to the world.
So in your book, you also talk about yogis talk about the higher level of mind or the lower level of mind and the relationship to the body. Can you share a little bit about what that means, the higher the level, and how is that similar or different than what's going on in your body?
Sure. So it's interesting to me, the definition of body in the ancient yoga texts is there's 5 layers to the body. So the physical is just one. It's the first layer, and that's what we see when we look in the mirror. That layer, and then below the physical body is the energetic body, and and so our energetic body is like prana. This vital energy that we take in through our breath and that moves through our entire system, and the subtle that's considered the subtle body, like the energetic body. And they say that like what fuels the prana, like what affects prana to move in the ways that it moves within our body. The yogis identified it's our mind. And the mind is defined as our thoughts and emotions. So our thoughts and emotions are affecting our energy. It's affecting all the winds in our body. So there's the physical body, the energetic body, or the subtle body, and underneath the energetic body is the lower mind. So the lower mind is that part of the mind that's just runs on autopilot. It's just like automatic, reactive, conditioned. Someone yells at me, I yell right back. Then I'm like in my lower mind. And then the next layer is the higher mind. So this is the 4th layer of the body, is the higher mind. And that's the part of the mind we can tap into when we can actually really pause and use our discernment, like use our wisdom. Like how should I actually respond? Like someone just yelled at me. Am I going to just yell right back? Or am I going to take a couple breaths, consider the situation, what I'm going through, what they're going through, and respond in a way that might actually help the situation instead of cause greater harm and greater hurt? So the higher mind is like going beyond our conditioning and going beyond our reactions and really tapping into a deeper understanding and wisdom and discernment, and then responding from that space.
And much more intentional.
Very, very much so. And then the 5th layer is called Anandamaya Kosha, which means bliss. And that layer is always, at the deepest part of ourselves, but whether we're tapped into it or not depends on what's happening in the other 4 layers and how we're responding to our present moment situations. So a lot of the ancient yoga practices are all about how do we shift from the lower mind to the higher mind. So a lot of the practices in the book, a lot of the awareness practices and the journaling practices we do in the book are to make that shift.
So to go from a reactory space to a more intentional space.
Yes. Yeah. And I know like we say that a lot, instead of reacting, to like pause, breathe, respond. But it's really, really hard. Like when we're in the grip of anger or one of these kleshas, it's really hard to actually even take 1 or 2 or 3 breaths before we respond. So it's really like in the course and as you go through the book, we're really training ourselves to be able to really pause and get into that deeper wisdom and compassion and that seat of consciousness, and really let that drive our thoughts and emotions and responses. So in the ancient text, it's very much emphasized that you're not your body, you're not your mind, but you are this consciousness that can direct your mind and body with wisdom and love. And that's really what we're trying to do.
And what are mitras?
Mitras, that's one of my favorite Sanskrit words. It means friend, but it's a very special kind of friend. It's a friend who saves you from yourself. It's like Mitra, it means technically like a protective force. So a Mitra is someone who with love and compassion can like see you. And sometimes our friends can see in us what we can't, you know? And so they are the people in your life that with compassion and tenderness and love, like they'll say like, hey, Reema, you're really hurting yourself in these ways that you're acting and these choices that you're making and these thoughts that you're having, and the way you're speaking to other people or to yourself, you know, and they'll kind of call you out, but with love and help you build awareness. And so in the book, the first homework is to grab two mitras and go through the journey with them. And there are people who you can share your experiences with. Because of course, as we practice yoga, so much surfaces. And so you can process your experiences with your mitras that, hey, today I came through this block or this breakthrough or, you know, this breakdown, and you have an outlet. And you learn so much from sharing with your friends and listening to their experiences and just having that support. It's like profound.
It is true that they also serve as a good mirror. And sometimes we do need the feedback from the external world and to even talk out loud to say things where we could hear ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where mitras are also helpful in a sense.
Yeah, it's a big lesson for me because I'm very introverted. I can be very happy alone and practicing alone. But in my life, I've observed like practicing alone versus practicing with mitras or a group. And it is infinitely more powerful when you're with a group. And I share a teaching from one of my teachers in the book. And he says that he grabbed a pencil and he showed the group he was teaching. He said, this is the power of practicing on your own. And with ease, he just broke the pencil in half. And he grabbed a wad of pencils. He said, this is the power of practicing as a group. And he like tried with all his strength and he could not break those pencils because we're just stronger together. You know, we like build like this resilience and support that's just like that's just priceless.
Mm-hmm. You also share about a three-step process that you can receive spiritual teaching in your book. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. You know, I hear often in like spiritual circles today that just the importance of teaching in a non-dogmatic way, which I agree with completely. And it's beautiful to me when I see the ancient texts because they had that same emphasis. They were like, it was one of the main points in the Upanishads, which is one of the sacred texts. They're like, don't believe anything that you don't experience yourself. You know, the whole purpose of yoga is to open the knots in the mind and the body so each of us can directly experience ultimately consciousness, you know, the deepest truth of ourselves and the world. And so this three-step process supports that teaching, which is like how to receive a spiritual teaching. So the first is in Sanskrit, it's called manan, which means just to, you know, the ancient yogis, they understood the mind so well and how easily distracted the mind can get. So the first step is just to, you know, release the distractions as best as you can. And when you're receiving a teaching, to really just try to just listen, you know, with not just with your mind, but with your heart, and try to really focus on the teaching itself. And the second is shravan, which means kind of like contemplation. So when you receive the teaching and you're listening, really receive it from the heart and let it resonate within your system. And instead of just believing it, see, how does this sit with me? Like, how does this resonate with me? And like be in the question of that and the exploration of that. And then the third step is in Sanskrit, it's called nididhyasana, which means meditative practice. So then after those first two steps, actually go through some meditative practices, whether it's pranayama or asana or different meditations or mantra, and see, you know, what you experience within your own being, how those teachings are moving through your own being.
Thank you. The Yogi's Way, Transform Your Mind, Health, and Reality by Reema Datta. Reema, is there anything we haven't shared that you really want people to know?
Oh, I want people to know that, peace is possible. Absolutely. And when you're in the thick of it, whether it's depression or anxiety or shame or fear, just to know that like those waves of the mind, that's part of being human. And I'll probably, as much yoga or anything we do, we'll probably always experience those ups and downs in our lives. But to know that there is this underlying reality beneath all of those thoughts and emotions that is love, and just to know that those waves are part of being human. And so we don't have to judge ourselves for it, but we can know that we have these practices that help us not just connect with that love for a moment, but to really eventually like anchor ourselves in that dimension of love and approach ourselves and all of life from there. And that's, that peace is possible. And it does take some practice, but we can absolutely do it.
Beautiful. Where can people find you?
My website is reemayoga.com. It's REEMA yoga.com, and my social media handles are the same. And if anyone does pick up the book, and you'll see I offer so many practices in the book. If you would like to experience it as a community, I am offering an online 12-week course starting in September. So you're welcome to join our group and we can go through the entire book together.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been so wonderful to share.
Absolutely. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And if you like this topic and what you heard, please share it with people. Please go to the App Store and give it a rating. And share with everyone so that they know how to find this podcast and how to find Reema Datta. Until next week, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. Bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy developed by Dr. Foojan Zeine is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing Awareness Integration Therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.